You know, I get asked a lot about narrative attacks in insurance, and let me sort of come clean. As a cybersecurity expert, I will admit I do not understand the insurance industry, nor does anyone, I think. So the problem in that sector is that it's so easy to toss out a narrative that kind of plays to the complexity of policies and premiums and terms and you name it, that I don't think you can really underestimate the problems that a complex industry creates. That threat vector plays off of not just the complexity, but again, admittedly, the innocence that most techies like myself, cybersecurity teams have when you're asked about insurance. Now, cyber insurance has caused us to become students of this. I've done a lot of writing, I've done a lot of research in this, and as I dig deeper, sadly, I realize that I feel like the more I learn, the more I don't understand about the insurance industry. So again, I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, but I will say that it is very prone to narrative threats simply because most people don't really understand the mechanics of this industry, and I can prey off of that as a narrative attacker. So the problem the insurance industry has when it comes to narrative attacks is really all they sell is trust. They don't manufacture anything, they don't produce cars, they don't build widgets. They sell trust. That's what we all buy when we're buying an insurance policy. So if a narrative attack in some sense impedes or degrades that trust, you've attacked the basis for the whole industry. So they really do have that problem of having that heightened dependence on us trusting the insurance company. So some nonsensical thing comes out about the company that you may be dealing with. Maybe it's your life insurance policy. It could be, you know, a blanket policy that you depend on. That's very important to you. It could have something to do with health insurance. Who knows what that could mean for your psyche? And you might decide to make some decision, maybe even change policies based on a very weird narrative. We saw recently that it was this terrible incident where a CEO was actually killed. And I'm sure that narratives played a role in that whole sort of planning and the execution of that, that whole sort of plan. I mean, I'm sure that narratives were a big part of that. So the insurance industry is very prone simply because they're so dependent on us trusting the insurance company. So if you're a CISO or a CSO, you know today a pretty big theme is protecting executives. Now, we've written a lot about this at TAG. One of the topics that comes up a lot is, should you have guards, guns, kind of the physical protection? The answer is yes. But I think a much more important part of this is managing the sort of the digital risk and the narratives that could create a real problem for executives. It's not something we thought so much about maybe 20 years ago. We thought you protect the executive, you put them in an armored car or her. Today, it's different. Today, it's expanded to their online persona and definitely the narratives that are out there maybe on social media, in email, and any other sort of form that you don't control about your executives. So I think what you need to adopt from a CISO perspective is a broader, sort of more expansive line of sight into the kinds of threat vector that exists for your executives. And that's leadership team, CEO, board, and even middle-level managers and your employees as well. It could be a lot of high risk that spreads across the whole organization. So what this means is we have to adopt a slightly different mindset. It's got to shift from tangible threat to more virtual threat, and the virtual threat is around narrative, digital risk, online persona, things like that, that haven't traditionally been in your purview because we don't control what's said on social media. You know, to deal with the narrative attack problem in insurance, I think one of the things Blackbird does nicely is it sits between two things. It sits between raw data collection and insight. And insight is what people like me need to make a decision. And the word that's used is intelligence, right? It's this narrative intelligence. It's a layer that sits between all the stuff that's out there. And if you spend 10 minutes on social media, you get a sense of the range of reasonable and unreasonable stuff that's there. And again, ultimately, it's not intelligence I want as a manager. I have to have insight. I have to be able to prioritize and decide what to do. So I like that idea of intelligence, sort of connecting my decision making with raw data and helping to curate it to make sure I have a good idea of what may be accurate and what may not be. That's the first step, and probably the most important step if I want to handle a narrative attack that's being aimed, in this case, at an insurance company.